Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, here to look ahead to this week's round of fixtures in the last 16 of Europe's premier club competition. It's an interesting looking bunch of fixtures, actually. Some of them might, on paper, look a little bit difficult to get a read on, to find an angle, to find some value. Fortunately, we've got two experts to help us with that, Ian Broderick and Mark O'Haire. Guys, welcome along. Last week, we were relatively confident about some of the bets, and they didn't all come through. I think the only winning tip came from me, sitting over 3 goals in the Barcelona PSG game. But other than that, I was well on board, Mark, with backing Sevilla, which is what we thought looked like a great bet for a team that were bang in form, hadn't conceded a goal for over 900 minutes. It was an incredible run that they were on, and they got blown away by Dortmund. There was a lot of money for Dortmund coming into the game as well. But it wasn't a good week for Spanish teams.
No, it really wasn't. I just wonder whether there's something stylistically at play here, and it's something I've mentioned previously, going back to last season, actually. If you look at La Liga's clubs' performances in Europe, they tend to get overawed when they're coming up against, stylistic opposites, if you like, in terms of certain particular leagues. I know the standards in La Liga have dropped a little bit since Ronaldo departed and the soap opera at Barcelona and money issues across the board, really. But you look at the way elite football is going right now, there seems to be sort of waves of certain systems and formations being in vogue. And right now, it's quite an expansive, adventurous approach with pace and precision. And you look at where the top coaches are at, the likes of Guardiola, Klopp, Pochettino, Flick. You could even say Pioli and Conte in Italy as well. There's a vibrancy about those teams, about how they go about their business. And at times, I think La Liga looks a little bit lost on the European stage in terms of it's quite passive. It's quite unable to kind of cope with the increased tempo. We saw that with Real Madrid against Man City last season. Definitely saw that with Barcelona in their games against Bayern Munich and PSG, and Sevilla too just looked overawed by Dortmund, really. Not just in how they went about the business. I think Dortmund tactically played Sevilla spot on, really. But it was quite interesting to see the market moves against them as well. So clearly someone somewhere really rated Dortmund and didn't rate Sevilla at all. Interestingly, we saw loads of money for Barcelona too ahead of their game against PSG, but that didn't go to plan either. So yeah, it's quite a small sample, really, in terms of what I've kind of been thinking towards it in terms of La Liga. And I think it'd be quite interesting, again, to see as a test this week, because Real Madrid are also meeting basically an opposite in terms of approach with Atalanta. So, yeah, be interesting to see how that one comes, but we'll come to that soon.
Yes, we certainly will. We've got Real Madrid against Atalanta. Also, Atlético Madrid against Chelsea. So 2 La Liga sides in action this week. Let's see whether or not Mark's theory plays out this week as well. Before we continue, I absolutely must tell you that voting for the SBC awards close this Thursday. We've been nominated again. We've won Best Podcast for the last 2 years. We'd love to make it a hat trick of victories. So if you'd like to vote for us, that'd be great. We'd be much obliged. The link is in the pinned tweet on Team Matchbook. Should also be in the description of the podcast as well, wherever you're listening to us from. So yeah, if you fancy voting for us, we'd be much obliged. Voting closes on Thursday. Brodders, last week we also really liked the look of Juventus at Porto in Portugal, but that didn't pay out either.
No, I think it was a bit simpler in that case. I think it was just Juventus threw in a stinker from very early on when Bentancur sort of sloppily gave away that first goal. Mm-hmm. Their whole approach was tired, lazy. They just didn't seem up for it at all, which was extraordinary. I don't know.
Was it arrogance, Brodders? Do you think complacency, arrogance?
I think there's a good chance there was. I think they kind of felt Porto were definitely one of the teams they'd want to face at this stage, and I think they went into it thinking they just had to turn up and they were going to stroll to a sort of 1-2-0 type victory. And then, of course, Porto were absolutely at them from the beginning. And credit to Porto. I mean, they were pressing high up the pitch and they were forcing mistakes out of Juventus. And I think Juventus were very fortunate, really, to come away with a 2-1 loss. I mean, that away goal puts them in prime position for the second leg. And probably they didn't even deserve to be that. I mean, arguably, they could have had a penalty even in injury time, as Ronaldo was one of those sort of 50-50 penalties that could go either way. So I think Juventus are okay to progress. I think they will make amends in the second leg, but they were very poor. And it's just one of those occasions where you have a bet and the team doesn't show up, unfortunately. But we've got some more games this week to have a go at it.
Yes, we do. We certainly do. Shall we get to that now then and discuss one of the interesting-looking fixtures? We've got a few. One of the interesting-looking ones is Atalanta against Real Madrid. Atalanta, there's been a switch in the market now. Atalanta are now favourites. You can get them at 2.51. Real Madrid offered at 2.84 to win in Bergamo on Wednesday evening. The draw is at 3.6. Because of that switch in the market, the actual handicap line you want to be looking at, we haven't had time to update it because it's just changed now, but Atalanta, you can get them at -1/4 goal at 2.12. Real Madrid at +1/4 goal at 1.8. The goal line is over 3.25. At 2.31, under 3.25 goals is 1.66. Regular listeners to the podcast and viewers to the program will know that I'm based in Madrid. I cover Real Madrid for my day job, and it's been interesting to see them in the last few weeks. They've been grinding out victories. They've had 4 wins in La Liga in a row, 3 clean sheets in a row. They beat lowly Valladolid 1-0 at the weekend. Wasn't a classic performance, but they've got 9 players out injured. They still managed to grind out a victory. And the fact that they've been so defensive, so solid at the back, and not necessarily shining going forward. I feel bad saying this, and obviously you guys are going to correct me and tell me that I'm wrong, but I think my instinct is going against goals in this game, in an Atalanta game. I know it sounds absolutely ludicrous. Brothers, tell me why I'm out of my mind.
Oh, you're out of your mind. I think the reason there's been this big switch in the market is that it looks as though Real Madrid are going to be without a number of players, and very important players, of course, for this game.
Karim Benzema, most notably, who is
so clearly Benzema's their main goal threat. At the back, you've got Ramos, you've got Carvajal. The whole team is looking a little bit shaky in the middle. Although I will say, in the middle of their midfield, you've still got the unbelievable quality of Toni Kroos and Modric, who, I mean, Modric is defying age and putting in some fabulous performances still. I think, looking at the game, it's going to be very interesting to test Mark's theory and my theory as well about whether or not La Liga's regression is to do with certain clubs or whether or not it's a general regression, and the likes of Real Madrid are going to struggle in this type of game potentially. So when you look at their performances in the group stage, you would certainly feel that when they came up against teams with some pace and some vibrancy, for want of a better term, they struggled. Look at their games against Borussia Mönchengladbach, for example, Shakhtar, of course. These are games that historically Real Madrid would never really have had any problems with. But coming into this season's competition, they've really struggled to keep teams out.
They did finish top of their group.
I know, I understand that, but I think that was more to do with Inter failing to perform. And the fact that actually, I don't think Borussia and Shakhtar are very good sides, particularly. I think.
You love Shakhtar. What are you talking about?
I do love Shakhtar, but in the context of a Champions League group, they are, they're not a team. They're sort of a team that will finish second or third. They're not a team that's going to be threatening the top spot realistically. And they're great. I love them because they have Brazilian youngsters that they bring through, and I love watching their development. But anyway, that's a side thing.
But we digress. Yes.
But we digress. So look, coming into this game, I think it's interesting that Real Madrid have kept 3 clean sheets in a row because.
Not against the best teams in La Liga, it has to be said. Getafe, who are the lowest scorers in La Liga, a really bad Valencia side, and Valladolid, who are struggling. So not the best teams, but...
And also, it was extraordinary that it did manage to keep clean sheets. I mean, Valladolid should have scored at least 1 or 2, I would have said, in that game, watching the chances, especially early on when Courtois pulled off one of his usual miracle stops with his feet that somehow went over the crossbar. So coming up against an Atalanta side who we know score goals for fun, we know that they are going to press forwards. I think Atalanta will approach this game in a positive manner. I am sort of umming and ahhing about the goal line because I think looking at it, Atalanta threw in a couple of very un-Atalanta-like performances in the group stages. So their away victories with Ajax and Liverpool were both games where they didn't play their usual style, and they set up in a defensive style for Atalanta, and it worked very well. And I wonder whether or not we'll see that version of Atalanta in the second leg. And I think in this first leg they're going to see it as an opportunity with the absentees that Real have to push forwards. They come here after a 4-2 win against Napoli at the weekend. I mean, I thought that they would struggle potentially without Papu Gomez, who we know has gone to Sevilla, but they just carry on. I mean, there's this fantastic system that Gasparini's brought in, and they've got so many good quality attacking players that I see Atalanta having too much for Real in this game. Actually, I do. You know, if you looked at the 1x2 markets, I would say Atalanta are fair favourites because I think that they will potentially win this. But yeah, the more straightforward angle I think is goals, because Atalanta we know will give chances. Real Madrid do have the quality with the likes of Kroos and Modric to create chances for the Rodrigos and the Mariano Diaz's of this world, who are still good quality. Yeah, they're going to be plenty good enough to score against an Atalanta defence. But this is a sort of 2-1, 3-1, 3-2 type vibe for me. So I think I'm going to go over 3 goals in it.
Over 3 goals. Okay. Mark, last week, obviously, I was suggesting over 3 goals in PSG Barca, only to be told that, it's a first leg, it's probably going to be a bit cagey, maybe don't necessarily go with that.
I backed you up, Phil, just to be clear.
Okay. No, that's why I was talking to Mark. That's what I was talking about. How do you feel about going? Because Mark is a little bit cagier than Brothers. We know that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. How do you feel about this?
In fairness, last weekend I said no bet for me. No bet for me. You guys went ahead. Yeah, I mean, this one, I do think Real Madrid are vulnerable. Certainly that head-to-head theory will be tested now because we've got a side from Italy who play expansive, attack-minded, forward-thinking football for the majority of their matches, it should be said. They play with energy, they press high, out of possession too. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Real Madrid do cope, particularly without their leaders in both boxes, the most influential players in Ramos and Benzema. So I do think there's an opportunity for Atalanta, but clearly the market is catching up with that too. There's been money for Atalanta in the last 24 hours since Zidane more or less said that Benzema was very unlikely to be fit. They're going to test him out today on Monday, but it doesn't look like he's going to be ready. So yeah, but I look at that sort of Real Madrid defence right now without Ramos, and I think Zapata is just going to bully them. I look at Muriel, the way he played at the weekend against Napoli, got given an opportunity to start. Absolutely superb performance. Probably will start now because Ilicic, according to Gasparini, hasn't been quite the same in the last couple of weeks. He did come back into form and was walking on water for a while, but Muriel was superb when he got his opportunity. But yeah, as Brodders says, that midfield of Real Madrid of Kroos, Casemiro and Modric obviously has the potential to dominate any match. And I think it's easy to forget that Real Madrid were absolutely fantastic against Inter Milan in the group stage. So that's the kind of wary, something that's I'm a little bit wary of really. But as you said, Kitro, the recent run of Los Blancos has been quite kind in terms of the opposition. So I'm not reading too much into the recent results and recent performances. I do think this is different. Interestingly, Gasparini was asked after the game against Napoli about how his team are going to approach it. It's Real Madrid, a massive historic match, knockout game in the Champions League in Bergamo for the first time. Are they going to be defensive? And he said, no, not really, because our threats are going forward. That's where our strengths are at, and we need to score goals. If we want to progress, we need to score goals. Clearly, managers can say anything they want really to the press and do something different. But I'd like to believe him. He's a wise old owl, but he often does tell the truth about what their approach is likely to be. So I'd like to see Atalanta take a forward-thinking approach, knowing the players that Real Madrid are missing. But I would be taking it slightly more cautious than Brodders and take the over 2 3/4 line. Around 1.8-ish. I did like the look of Atalanta off a scratch 0 start, 195 on Sunday, but since the move, that's been clipped into about 1.8. So I'll probably leave that. But yeah, slightly edged towards Atalanta, but I do expect goals.
So there we go. Just confirmation. Brodders suggesting over 3. Mark going over 2.75, over 2.75 at 1.8. And over 3 at just over evens. There we go. An interesting looking game to kick things off. Atalanta against Real Madrid. Let's move on and talk about Borussia Mönchengladbach against Manchester City and give you the odds for that. You can get Gladbach at 9.0 to win at home. Manchester City at 1.34 to win in Germany with the draw at 5.7. Gladbach with a 1.5 goal start at 2.01. City with a -1.5 goal handicap at 1.9. The goal line here set at 1.84 for over 3. Under 3 goals is at 2.05. It's 8th in the Bundesliga against the runaway leaguers in the Premier League. It looks possibly like the most one-sided tie. Is there any value in this game, Mark? And if there is, what is it?
It's difficult. I don't really like backing big underdog, big handicaps in sort of knockout ties, but it's hard to sort of dismiss Manchester City. There's already been money for them on the -1.5 handicap. Now into 1.9. It was odds against on Sunday evening. So clearly the market is expecting City to hack up quite comfortably here. Obviously, this is one which has been moved to neutral territory as well, which might actually help Gladbach because they have been one of the best teams to follow in terms of home performance and home results under Mark O'Haire Brodders until this season. Even at the end of last season, without supporters, Gladbach were pretty decent at Borussia Park, but they've fallen off a cliff this time around. Really bizarre, actually. They have beaten Bayern and Leipzig at Borussia Park, but then they lost at home to Mainz at the weekend, and they've largely sort of just. I don't know. They've lost something. It's hard to put your finger on it, but I've been very unimpressed with them quite a lot this season. Even that Bayern game which they won, they were 2-0 down and could have been out of sight Bayern before the Gladbach came back into the game and managed to burgle a 3-2. They have got quality in forward areas. We know all about that, but defensively they can be a bit of a rabble. Two strong centre halves, but the system just doesn't seem to stand up to. Threats coming forward, and at the moment City are about as dominant as you can get in terms of a European force. Their fortunes have turned around hugely since November. Quite frightening, really, the improvements that they have made, particularly defensively. I know this is all just Premier League data, but in the last 16 Premier League games, they've given away fewer than 0.2 XG from open play per game on average, which is astonishing, really. They're just not giving opponents any opportunity to create anything at all. And then you look at the team that they could field this week, midweek. Gundogan's back, De Bruyne's back, Aguero's back. They're pretty much at full strength. So, yeah, Gladbach, I thought, were a little fortunate to sneak through that group. Their only wins came against Shakhtar, which were 10-0 on aggregate, and they conceded 2 or more goals in all 4 of their meetings against Madrid and Inter. So, the appointment of Mark O'Haire Brodders to Dortmund at the end of the season, I don't think that's ever ideal, really, in terms of mid-season plans for a team, and particularly his quotes about not bringing any of his players with him to Dortmund. I don't think that's the greatest motivational tool for his players either. So, yeah, City are in a league of their own right now, and it's hard to dismiss them. So I'd still take them at the -1.5 handicap at 1.9, but I'd get a little bit tetchy if it got down to sort of closer to the 1.75 mark.
Okay. Brothers, is there value in backing City here with a big handicap? But they are huge favourites.
I mean, I think I probably echo pretty much everything Mark said, actually. There's always a little bit of a dilemma as to whether or not you back teams with a large handicap away from home in a first leg. I think in some ways, Man City, if they have the opportunity, will try and smash Borussia and get the tie finished in the first leg, given their commitments on different fronts. I mean, they're still in 4 competitions, as we know. So I think if they can win the game comfortably to give themselves the opportunity to do some rotation in the second leg and perhaps take their foot off the pedal, that's something I think Guardiola will look at. Mark's already touched on the fact Mark O'Haire Brodders has not resigned, but he's going to be joining Dortmund at the end of the season. And I think Borussia have taken their foot off the pedal. Sorry, that's the wrong way of putting it, but I think their performances have suffered since he's made that announcement. And I don't really have a great deal to add. I think one angle that I am interested in this game is potentially goals, because although Man City have looked very good defensively, in a number of away games they have conceded. You know, look at their last 10 or so, they've conceded to Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Everton, but also to the likes of Swansea. You know, I don't know, that's the FA Cup, but I think generally speaking, they are capable of letting teams have a consolation goal. So I could see this game finishing something like 3-1 to City, where you get the handicap come in and also the goal line. And I think I'd probably prefer the goal line, because I think there's a chance Man City clear it on their own, and I think it gives you the option as well. If we see the Borussia Mönchengladbach that drew 2-2 with Real, for example, then we've got that on our side as well. So I think the goal line for me rather than the handicap.
Okay, Brothers going for goals in that one rather than City, although City at -1.5 look interesting. The goal line is over 3, and as Brothers said, City could clear that on their own. You can get them at around, you can get the goal line at 1.84 over 3 goals. Let's move on and talk about another Spanish side who are in action. We've already spoken about Real Madrid. Let's talk about their cross-city rivals, Atlético Madrid, who are available at 2.75 to win this game, which is being played in Romania, in Bucharest, not in the Spanish capital. Chelsea available at 3.1, and the draw is also at 3.1. You can get Atlético Madrid with a plus 0.0 goals handicap, draw no bet, basically at 1.9. Chelsea at 2.01, and the goal line here it's low. It's over 2 at 1.88. You can get under 2 goals at 2.01. Chelsea were the last side to win an away game in the Champions League against Atlético Madrid back in 2017. They won a group stage match at the Estadio Wanda Metropolitano. Since then, Atlético Madrid unbeaten in the 13 subsequent home matches that they played in the competition. Obviously, this isn't quite a home game because they're playing in Romania. And Atlético coming into this game in a strange run of form. They lost at the weekend to Levante at home in La Liga, their first home league defeat in 14 months. But they've also conceded in 7 consecutive games for the first time ever since Diego Simeone took over 10 years ago. This is their worst ever defensive run. Not ideal coming into a big Champions League game. Brodders, is the goal line interesting to you, or are you going to be patriotic and back Chelsea?
The goal line is interesting to me. I know Mark and I have differing approaches on this one. I think if you look at Atletico's performances in the last couple of months, their defence has not been the sort of defence that we would expect from the Atletico side. They've conceded in 9 of their last 10. And as you say, they come into this off the back of a 2-0 loss to Levante. So, I mean, as a Chelsea fan, I think Chelsea have got an excellent opportunity here on neutral territory to progress in the competition. You look at the way that Atletico is set up, and again, we have this La Liga tactical approach, for want of a better term, against a team that's got the physicality and the strength and the speed to cause them some problems. Obviously, we're not sure how Tuchel will set Chelsea up, which is going to be part of the considerations here. But I think from my side, looking at the game, I can see Chelsea doing very well in this match against Atletico. I think Atletico still have Suarez up front, but they seem to lack. I mean, João Felix has disappeared in the last month or two. They seem to lack some incisions. I'm not sure if you have some insight on that, Phil, from your time looking, but their goal threat seems to be entirely Luis Suarez at the moment. And if he's kept quiet, they seem to struggle to produce from other areas of the pitch right now.
They've got Marcos Llorente, who's been converted into a goal machine when he was bought as a defensive midfielder, and he's been playing in all sorts of different positions. But yeah, I mean, it's very squarely centred on Luis Suarez in terms of goal scoring. Yeah.
But I think Chelsea have shown, even under Tuchel, the defence appears to have become a bit more solid. But he's been rotating players. I'm still not sure he knows exactly who his best defence is, and we're seeing him experiment with players at the moment. Callum Hudson-Odoi came on at half-time at the weekend and then was yanked off after 25 minutes. I mean, that's a very clear message that he's sending to the squad that, perform or you're not going to be playing. Thiago Silva's still missing, which is a huge miss because he's been the linchpin of the improvement in the Chelsea defence this season. So I think looking at the game, I could definitely see a situation where both teams score because Chelsea do give up the opposition chances. And as we know, Suarez still only, he's not got the movement that he had when he was a 25-year-old, but he's got those unbelievable finishing instincts still. And I think he'll cause Chelsea problems.
A couple of weeks ago, I think he was on 16 goals from 18 shots. So it's just crazy. Incredibly clinical. Okay, yeah, I'm with you as well. I really like the goal line in this because I can definitely see both teams scoring. Mark, you jumping aboard the goals bandwagon?
No, not really. I did find this one the most difficult one to size up, in fairness. Chelsea are favourites to qualify, which I thought was quite interesting, particularly when you see Atleti are favourites on neutral territory for this first leg tie, which doesn't really make a huge amount of sense to me. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting one because I think there's a couple of subplots for me in this one. Firstly, what are we going to expect from Atletico? Because after sort of years of promising change, they have evolved a little bit this season towards a 3-5-2 system from their normal flat back 4, the 4-4-2, which works so well for them. And obviously, we've seen Chelsea evolve now under Tuchel as well to a team that like to dominate possession, dominate control of games too. So it's quite interesting to see how they will match up. I just have this nagging feeling that because of what's happened in the past couple of days, past couple of weeks for Atletico, that Simeone might go back to the tried and trusted defensive formula because this is a European tie. he'll consider his team as underdogs. So while they have been quite good and fun to follow this season, maybe that's because they've got Suarez up front. They've been a bit more proactive, knowing that they've got that ability in attack to finish opportunities. I just wonder, Levante had opportunities in the last week twice in the 2 games. They've conceded to the likes of Granada, Valencia, Celta, Cadiz, Eibar, just this calendar year alone, really. So I have a feeling, because of what happened at the weekend, that he might just decide, you know what, let's go back to what we're good at in these European ties. It worked so well against Liverpool last season. We're not going to see a huge amount of possession because Chelsea will monopolise things. That's the way Tuchel has shown he wants to play. So there's an opportunity there to oppose goals. They have shown the blueprint to do this in Europe over the last few years. So it's not something that's going away from what they're comfortable in doing. And I guess I did some research last week, really, over the last 5 seasons worth of Champions League, last 16 first leg ties. And the number of goals and high scoring games was really quite surprising. It was about 60% for over 2.5 goals. Almost 40% of those were over 3.5 goals. However, 10% of those matches did end goalless. And I just wonder, out of all the ties, this to me looks like the most likely one that could end 0-0 last week and this week too. I know you guys are absolutely right to be expecting goals after what we've seen with Atleti in the last few weeks, but it's just that nagging feeling, really, knowing after what's happened at the weekend, what happened last midweek as well against Levante, that it might be a case of just going back to what we know, particularly with Simeone believing that his team are probably underdogs for this tie to qualify. So I liked under 2.25 at 173. I'm not sure if he'll still get that. So under 2 at 2.01, knowing we'll get money back if there's exactly 2 goals, I think was absolutely fair enough. But this is, out of all 4 ties this week, the one I'm sort of less confident on.
Okay, there we go. A couple of angles, one from Brodders, one from Mark. No official bet here from us, although we've given you some food for thought for that game, Atlético against Chelsea. The final game we're going to talk about is Lazio against defending champions Bayern Munich. You can get Lazio at 5.0 to win at the Stadio Olimpico. Bayern are offered at 1.7. The draw at 4.25. Lazio with a plus 3.25 goal start at 2.05. Bayern Munich with a minus 3.25 handicap at 1.86. The goal line over 3.25. You can get that at a fraction over evens, and under 3.25 is at 1.89. I was looking at this game this morning. I was looking at Lazio. I was looking at their stats. I was looking at Bayern. I was looking at their stats, and I feel that Lazio can contribute to a game here. It might look like a really one-sided match on paper, a one-sided tie on paper, but I think Lazio can get involved here and potentially cause Bayern some problems, at least contribute to a high-scoring game. Is goals the way forward for this one, Mark?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both those trails of thoughts, Phil. I think it's so annoying that UEFA are scheduling these games at the same time, because this is a match which you'd really like to see, with full focus, really. But my first impressions of Bayern Munich are a little bit too short in Rome, and I also think the goal line could be attacked. Bayern, quite rightly, getting plenty of heat in the last few weeks for their blips. The Bielefeld draw last week was blamed on tiredness and fatigue after travelling back from the Club World Cup, which is absolutely fine, but conceding 3 goals to Bielefeld is just never cool. And they didn't really cover themselves in glory for a lot of the game against Frankfurt at the weekend. A Frankfurt team missing Andre Silva as well, gave up a few opportunities. And I think team news is going to be interesting. We know Pavard is a major doubt. Boateng has had personal struggles following the tragic death of his ex-girlfriend, and Alaba's confirmed he's leaving at the end of the season. So, there's 3 defensive players with question marks over. Muller's had COVID issues. Gnabry's been injured. So there's 5 of their preferred starting 11 with question marks, doubts, or unavailability around them coming into this game too. So they don't have the biggest squad, and I guess there's rumblings of discontent behind the scenes between Hansi Flick and the sporting director Hansi Salihamidzic as well. So all isn't particularly well right now at Bayern. It's interesting that the market is losing a little bit of faith. They've switched to second favourites now in the outright market as well. And they're around 1.8 to win at Frankfurt at the weekend. So I wouldn't put a huge amount of difference between Frankfurt and Lazio in terms of what they're capable of achieving. I think from a Bayern Munich perspective, defensively, it's more than just a blip now. Even last season, we were talking about them on the route to winning the Champions League, but they're continually getting exposed and caught out far too often. And I just think like Lazio have enough quality, particularly in forward areas, Immobile, Luis Alberto, Correa, to really cause problems here. So they're a team who are superbly coached under Simone Inzaghi. He's a coach who'll move on to bigger and better at some point. And I know, excuse the French, but Lazio have a sort of penchant for pissing the bed a little bit when they come up against the better teams. But they have shown in the last 2 years they have turned Juventus over. They've won the Coppa Italia and the Super Coppa as well. So, they shouldn't be overawed by this situation, but there is a potential for them to do so. But despite that, I think there's enough fragility in this Bayern team for Lazio to cause problems. So yeah, the goal line stands out. It was almost standing at 4 against Frankfurt at the weekend. So to get 3 onside, I think is definitely appealing. I mentioned those stats previously about first leg ties actually going over quite often, much more so than unders. And I do think Lazio potentially with a plus goal start on the Asian handicap isn't the worst bet, but I'd like to see team use more before committing there.
Lazio bang in form. They've won 7 of their last 8 matches in Serie A. Brodders, goal line for you, over 3, as Mark is suggesting. You get over 3 at 1.78, which is, again, a little bit more cautious from Mark, but potentially appealing. What are you thinking?
No, absolutely. I think I'd echo everything Mark said there. I think Bayern have been very un-Bayern-like in recent weeks with their defensive performances. I think that's not been helped by Alaba's decision to leave. You've mentioned Boateng. Sula playing at right back is an issue for them with his lack of pace. He's basically got the turning circle of a super tanker, but he has some strength in the aerial side of things. So I think yes, I wouldn't disagree with anything Mark said there. I think Lazio, every single one of their games in the group stages finished with 4 goals in their home time. They score and concede regularly, as do Bayern. You look at Bayern's performances in this competition, taking away from the Bundesliga for a minute, they're conceded twice against Salzburg. They're a team that is just going to look to outscore someone, and I think they're not in very good form at the moment. They simply aren't. Gnabry's a big miss. I don't expect him to be fit. He's had a hamstring issue, so they're playing Sane and Koeman alongside Lewandowski at the moment. I think Koeman and Sane are both very, very in and out. And Sane had an excellent game at the weekend by his standards, to be fair. But he's been poor for a lot of this season. And he's been a real letdown for Bayern fans, I think, because coming from Man City with that price tag, they were expecting him to set the Bundesliga alight. And frankly, he's been not good enough for the starting 11 when everyone's fit. So I think looking at it, I would agree with Mark. I think goals are the way to play this. I think there's every possibility that Lazio could even nick this, given the way Bayern have been playing, and I'm very happy to roam with over 3 goals at around 1.8. Okay,
there we go. We're all in the same boat for that one, which is always nice. Okay, so that's the 4 matches that we were going to cover on today's program. Let's do our bet recap, and the bets are Atalanta against Real Madrid over 3 goals at around about 2.03. You can get City at minus 1.5, 1.9 over 3 goals as well in that City game. Have a look at that. And Lazio Bayern over 3 goals at 1.78. That looks like a very, very tasty option as well. If any of those bets catch your eye and you're not yet a Matchbook customer, there is a new sign-up offer for you. Open an account, make a bet of £10 or whatever at odds of evens or higher. And once that's settled, Matchbook will give you £10 bonus. Very simple. It's only for new customers, but yeah, sounds good to me. You need to be 18 or over, obviously, and also it goes without saying, please gamble responsibly. This is supposed to be fun. When it's not fun, then things have to stop. But yeah, please gamble responsibly. So the final part of the program is where we get everyone's best bets. Brodders, your best bet for today's or this week's match day in the Champions League.
I will take over 3 goals in the Lazio v Bayern match.
Fair enough.
Nice to be able to pick first this week.
Yes, this week you pick first, predictably enough. Mark, what's your best bet for the weekend?
Yeah, same as Brodders, but as I have to go second.
Your second best bet then. What's your second best bet of the week?
Over 2 3/4 at Atalanta Madrid. I expect Madrid to score, but Atalanta's got the firepower to hurt an understrength backline of Madrid too. So hopefully there'll be goals in that.
Okay, so there we go. If you have to just pick two selections from this week's 4 matches, there they are. That's it for this week's edition of the Matchbook Champions League podcast. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Remember to subscribe to us on your preferred podcasting app. Follow us as well on social media, where we're doing lots of good things. So hopefully you can follow us there. And we'll be back very soon to talk about the second legs of these last 16 ties. So looking forward to that. Make sure you join us then.